Joining us to break all of the numbers down is I-24 News host and economic analyst Ariel Margalith. So, Ariel, give us the numbers. That's what we want to hear. What is the average salary in Israel today, and how does it compare within different sectors?
The average salary in Israel at the moment stands at 12,600 shekels, a little bit above that. And there has been an increase from the month before that. We can take a look at the graph that will show you all the details. That's an increase of 3.8% compared to the same period last year. So one would say, okay, it's going up just as much as inflation is going up.
Right.
Well, sort of, and not exactly, because inflation has gone up by 4.4% if you compare it to last year. You can see this year marked in orange there. You see 2022. Yeah. By the way, you can see the peak months for when people get salary increases per year. If we compare the years, usually that happens around March, and then again around the end of the year, around December.
Annual, why is that the case? Is that
that's
annual
probably because
meetings, I guess, with your boss?
Well, first of all, yeah, that might be when people are asking for pay rises. I think after the first quarter of the year,
right,
people often, here in Israel at least, it's usually around or before Passover, which is one time that people often ask for raises, and the other is just before the end of the year. Often people are asking themselves, what am I going to do next year? I'm going to stay here, and I'm not. You know, it's a good time for a pay discussion.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know, of course, you said the average salary is 12,000. We know that in certain sectors it is much higher. You know, I heard that in the high-tech sector there's an average salary of around 30,000 shekels, so that's quite a stark difference. But, you know, how does this compare to the cost of living that we're seeing in Israel overall? So,
first of all, as you just mentioned, 12,000 and the 3.8% that has increased, you know, the average salary has increased by 3.8%. That's mostly due to salaries in high-tech that have increased and have passed already the 30,000 shekels per month mark. If you're looking at the general population, that's of course pushing the mean up. But if you look at the median, you can actually identify that over 45% of paid employees here in Israel earn just a bit over 6,000 shekels, which is the minimum wage in Israel. So there is a huge difference between the median and the mean here in Israel. Obviously, the Statistics Bureau is happy to share the mean that is looking, you know, like it's improving with 12,600 in the latest data. But actually, the
high-tech sector that's pushing that up.
Very large parity that we're seeing, and that's just increasing. And as you're saying, yes, high-tech is at the top. With regards to cost of living, well, things here in Israel are just getting more and more expensive. Inflation is growing by 4.4%. And of course, salaries are not keeping up for most people. For some people, they are. For the poorest people who should be benefiting from salary increases due to inflation, that's usually not the case.
Right, and then when you see the cost of real estate, for example, buying a home go up by, I think it was 16% in the last year alone, 30% in the last 3 years. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And the high-tech sector, by the way, is a very small percentage of the overall Israeli workforce, right? I think
until recently it was 10% of Israelis that were employed in the high-tech sector and earning these very nice salaries. Now it's up to 15%, which is very nice for Israel, but still it's just a fraction of working people.
So what is happening? First of all, I want to know how salary increases actually compare with other OECD countries. That's, you know, something of interest to me.
I think it's very interesting. The Israeli Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Labor have, you know, come out to the media saying that salaries in Israel have increased by 7% since the pandemic started. Now it's true, they have increased by 3.8% just this last year, and then by 3.2% or so in 2021. But for many years they were pretty much stagnant, and they were not catching up with the very high prices of things. Let's take a look at Europe, for example, or in the United States and Japan. If you're looking at the G10 countries, the 10 most richest countries in the world, and you can see the financial crisis there in 2008, and then from 2010 you can see how, you know, there's been an incline in wages that have been going up by 2%, 3%, and now most recently in 2022 by 4%. So again, catching up with inflation? Not really. If you're looking at the United States, for example, inflation is at 9%. So, you know, wages are not really catching up with inflation.
Well, I'm not too shocked by what you've had to tell us today. Obviously, this gives us some insight as to what we need to be talking to our own bosses about when it comes to the types of raises that we should be receiving, given the high cost of living and the skyrocketing costs that we're seeing in Israel. Ariel, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Natasha.